When you have a delicious idea and you want to start it, you want to grow your business, maybe add new flavors or new products, it's really tempting to just want to listen to your friends and your family who tell you, yes, this is amazing. We love your product. But there is a big danger in not getting the right information, not getting data from a larger sample size and from people who don't know you. And I have seen it time and time again where people launch without getting this data, and it can really hurt their business. And there can be a lot of changes, expensive changes that come from not doing proper market research first. My guest today, Lara Fordis, is back on the podcast, and we are talking about best practices for conducting your own market research. And she's going to share with you her brand new course that will help you to do it right. Stay tuned. All right, everyone, welcome back to the podcast. This is so fun for me. We're actually doing a revisit with a very early guest, an OG guest. Lara Fordis is here. We're going to talk about market research. But this is actually one of the most downloaded episodes, is around validating your idea. And I interviewed you back in November of 2020. So, welcome back to the podcast, Lara.
Thanks. It's great to be here.
I'm excited to have this conversation because you and I have been working together and creating some exciting coursework where you want to help more people to actually do this work. But before we get into that, well, first of all, I'd love for you to introduce yourself. I know you've been in market research for a while, and you are one of the leading people, one of my go-to people for market research around CPG. So tell us a little bit about you.
Let's see. I've been doing market research since 1996, so I don't even want to do the math on that. But for a long time, and I started out working at agencies that primarily catered to Fortune 1000 companies, and so that was my original 15 years. First 15 years was in that, and then I began to think about what I wanted to do do next as I was at a phase of my life where I had a son who needed a little bit more time. And I thought, well, why don't I take on all the projects that agencies are too big, to handle? It's not cost effective for them. And I had a good reputation where I was. So that's kind of how it started, was the companies that knew they needed market research but couldn't really afford a traditional agency are ones that I could take on
Yeah.
and find a scrappy, creative way to get them something on their budget because I didn't have the overhead. I didn't have the, people demanding unlimited espresso and a billiard table and some of the things that a typical agency back in the late 90s would have had. Or actually, when I started, it was 2013. But still,
Yeah.
then there was a lot of that kind of expectation of market research agencies to have
Right.
those bells and whistles for their employees. So that I then naturally I segued into working with smaller to medium-sized companies. And then I thought, well, where my passion is really with startups and early stage companies. And so then I started more proactively experimenting with talking to people who are starting things up. And my first client was actually someone who was coming out with a mail order custom raw cookie dough
Ooh.
concept, which, now I go to the stores and see that, but custom raw cookie dough was very unusual in
Yeah.
2013 or whenever it was. Now, when I went to do my taxes and saw saw the financial consequences of that, initially I was like, wow. I'm like, but you know what? I'm passionate and I'm fortunate to be able to work for myself and have the flexibility to take on clients that I really love and love helping.
Yeah.
And so I've been independent since 2013. and I treat my clients' money as if it was my own, and I don't make decisions unless I would have made them if that was my money I was investing in a company.
I love that. I really try to align with partners and colleagues and find referrals that I feel like really have a heart for startups. And, we're rooting for the little guys and really want them to succeed. Now, that said, the budgets are sometimes out of reach, and we'll talk about that later. But let's talk about you mentioned that you went back and listened to the podcast from 2020, fall of 2020, which is wild. We were in the middle of a pandemic and feeling very shut in and locked in. And so I'm curious, here we are 4.5 years later. What would you say has changed or evolved in the market research industry?
I'd say it's the technology, and namely AI enables, so that's even in the last, few years or couple
Yeah.
years, there's been, there's just such dramatic changes so that it enables people who are not survey programmers, who don't want to learn how to use Qualtrics, to use survey platforms to collect feedback with confidence, and in a lot of the ways, that's a good thing. Like I'm all about empowerment and collecting feedback so you can collect feedback more inexpensively, more regularly. The challenge with AI is that it gives you it gives you a false sense of confidence sometimes because it looks so good. Like you put it out and it's like, whoa, look at these charts and tables. That's beautiful. But the danger is that could be like lipstick on a pig. Like the data underneath it that goes into creating those charts and tables, you don't know if it's valid or not because you're not old school, you know, looking through reams of paper or looking through an Excel sheet where you can, and we're humans, we're, things are
Sure.
fallible. So you might ask a question or be collecting data in such a way where there's like a little minor flaw, but the ripple effect of that can have major ramifications. And with AI, that essentially becomes invisible because it looks good and you have no reason to doubt it unless it's something extremely glaring, where you're like,
Right.
oh, that really doesn't make logical sense. But the things that are directional, it's like, oh, maybe you might say it's a surprise or it's not what I expected. But unless it's really, really dramatic, you're not likely to say, I think I'm going to go back to that data and pull up those those Excel spreadsheets and take a closer look. I mean, who has time, let alone desire, to do that kind of thing?
Right.
So, good in some ways, um, potentially a little dangerous in other ways. But overall, I'd say it's a net good thing. And that's the technology and the access to technology is probably the best thing. Also, you can get information about your target audience more easily. There's a lot more out there. Again, may not be perfect, but it looks and sounds so good. So, I mean, it provides a lot of really comforting shortcuts. It's just knowing when to question them
Yeah.
becomes a little bit of a challenge. So
I
it's
mean,
always good
that's
to have an
that's
outside.
AI, right? In a nutshell,
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah, it's
like
like a love, like I definitely have a love-hate relationship with it because I love to be able to utilize it, and yet I can fully see how easy it is to become dependent and to not exercise your quality control muscle
yeah.
because it looks good.
Yeah. So, I mean, AI is so good at synthesizing data, analyzing big numbers, lots of
Mhm.
numbers, that kind of thing. So I can definitely see where that would be super helpful. And then the target, really, the technology around target customers. Now, at the time, obviously, during COVID, people were not doing in-person focus groups. So I'm guessing those are back. But I think the in-home use testing has probably gotten a lot better too.
Yeah, I mean, out of out of a negative situation comes a lot of creativity. So a lot of things that used to be done in person, because that's the way we always did it, we're seeing the workarounds like virtual focus groups, virtual in-depth interviews, um, have more of a place. Because unless you're doing like a shelf set where you're setting up in a focus group facility and you're emulating like in your background a shelf set, if it's a concept test or certain things like that, like why not just do it virtually? You'll save a ton of money. um, Now granted, Fortune 500, Fortune 1000 companies, a lot of them find it fun to kind of see, so, but like for the people that we're dealing with,
Yeah. Yeah.
generally not worth it unless you're doing like a taste test or something that necessitates being in person. And
Yeah.
then I've gotten to know, well, you can't be in person, so why don't you do it in home? And that's called an IHUT, or in-home use test, when you don't have to come to a facility or a mall to try something. And that's become a real passion area of mine, because for small companies, it's a way to get a product in the hands of people. And it's actually provides a lot of advantages, because when you're, at the farmer's market or a focus group facility or a mall, you can get the taste and the texture, but you don't get the contextual use of something. So
Mm.
especially with like a snack food or a condiment or something that accompanies a meal, hearing about and seeing via video or pictures how people use the condiment at a meal, or their kids snack, how messy is it in the car, does it travel well to school? So some of those logistical in real life issues can be better addressed in home. And I wouldn't have really explored that as much had it not been necessitated by lack of ability to do in-person work.
Yeah. So let's just take a scenario, and I'd actually like to talk about like best case scenario if you do market research well, and then we'll talk about like like what often happens, unfortunately.
Mhm,
But let's say I have a condiment that I want to bring to market, right? A
mhm.
sauce or yeah, some kind of a sauce. We'll just call
Yeah,
it, we'll
yeah.
do that. So I make this delicious sauce in my home kitchen. All my friends and family are like, you should sell this. And maybe I even sell a little bit on the side, but it's like it's a very much a hobby. So I think I want to bring this to market, and I don't necessarily just want to go the farmers market route. Like I want to go, retail route,
Mhm.
e-commerce, that kind of thing. So what are some of the ways that I would use, like what's the I guess maybe the question is like what's the benefit of market research and what would that look like? Can you paint us a picture?
Well, for something like that, depending on what the scenario is, and assuming, you had done some competitive landscape research, so, you don't find out that, someone 3 states away is doing the exact same thing. They're just doing a bad marketing job, but, they're ramping up. But assuming it's a unique product, um, the advantage of market research is that you can find out if people are really going to buy it and pay money, not just like get it from you half price or free for the holidays, but like actually go out, purchase it with their own money and do so repeatedly.
Mm.
Because that's where a lot of early stage, and startups get into trouble, is because it's what people say they'll do and what they actually will do are often pretty different. And I've seen this happen with Kickstarter and like startup scenarios where everyone's like, yeah, go for it. And, they set like a, $150,000 goal. And then I see it's like, it's like 2,300, like, because, people want
It's
to be
the wallet
supported.
test,
Yeah.
right? It's like,
Yeah.
will people
But like when
actually?
push comes to shove, like and it's not nefarious, and it's not that they don't believe in it. It's just people think, oh, if I fill this unmet need, people will buy it. And that's just not true.
Yeah.
Even an unmet want won't necessarily be purchased. It has to be something that people perceive as a pain point or an aspirational want that they're willing to pay money for.
Mhm.
Anything else is, not going to get you the revenue that you want. So the advantage of market research is getting outsiders, people outside your 3 degrees of separation on your Instagram, Facebook, whatever. Like, what is the consumer who's going to purchase, you know, online in your local store? What are they thinking about it? And is it going to be a novelty one-time purchase, or is it going to be something that they see incorporating into their regular usage and regular purchase patterns? And that's not always great news. Like, I wish I could say that 100% of the time the market research comes back and reinforces exactly what you wanted to hear. But I'd much rather help people understand, like, these are the pros, these are the cons, and not spend their life savings, especially if it's in stocks right now, super bad idea, or quit their job until they know that they have the traction to make something viable, that sort of minimum viable proposition idea, and that it's going to make them enough money to live on. I mean, most of the people that I deal with aren't necessarily, some are, like, oh, this is going to make millions. But most people that I think we deal with are, the drive is more based on passion, not
Yeah.
on
A
fortune.
lifestyle business that, but yeah, gives them what they need, but they're not going
Mhm.
for the giant
Yeah, yeah,
$200 million payout.
yeah,
Um, okay, so it sounds like best case scenario is that you're able to either bring a concept or an actual physical product that you've made, and you're able to speak with less biased people and
yeah,
ask them. I think an important part of market research, which is what you do so well, is that there's ways that you phrase the question. There's certain questions that you ask and don't ask. There's certain ones that maybe you want open-ended, certain ones that maybe you want closed, right?
mhm,
Like yes, no, or ratings. I think there's just so much science and experience that you have that's built into actually doing good market research
yeah.
that gives you information back. And to be clear, if you're going to invest in market research, you have to like you're not always going to love what comes back. Like that's the whole point is to
Yeah,
get
I mean,
unbiased.
it is. The point of it is to be unbiased, and sometimes that, that means kind of cutting your losses or pivoting to a different
Right.
form factor or flavor or something, and having that information so that you can make an informed decision is certainly really important. One of the things that's changed in market research since 4.5 years ago is that with AI, you can ask open ends without the adverse consequences that I think I even cited 4.5 years ago. So clients often want what's called verbatim, sort of, quotes basically. And I look at these quotes and they're inarticulate, misspellings, bad grammar, emojis. Like, clients don't want to see that. They don't, but like, kind of the way of the world, especially because open-ended comments are not usually fun for people and they're typing them, or
Yeah.
now you can transcribe them and the AI will clean them up. So you can, when someone uses their voice, they tend to be much more articulate. And so when you present those findings, clients clients like
Yeah.
that a lot better. So you
Makes
don't have
sense.
to use them as sparingly. And there was something called coding, where coding, where you'd like, okay, these are the comments that fall into different buckets. And then
Mm.
you'd want to do that before, for instance, doing a survey. So I used to be a big proponent of doing that qualitative feedback so that when we go to the survey, we could have more definitive buckets. Now with AI, it will do a lot of the coding automatically. So you can ask open-ended questions, which often provide more robust data. And
Mhm.
so that's a really exciting improvement. Um, or people would go with word clouds, but sometimes like they'd ignore the not, like not good. They just focus on the word good. So it had inherent danger. So open-ended comments are really a lot better than they used to be. Um, the challenge with using templated surveys, even in SurveyMonkey, even like in big ones, is that sometimes it's the way you ask the questions and the answer choices. And this is a big peeve of mine. For a while, I did what was called the research rant of the week, where I talk about things. But one common problem I see is what's called double-barreled questions. So people will ask like, well, is it tasty and aromatic? Well, those are separate questions. Like we may think of them as like, that's what you want to know. Is it tasty and aromatic? But something can be tasty and not aromatic and vice versa. And so having the professionalism to make sure you don't ask a double barrel question that someone can't answer. And I've seen like Bank of America do. I mean, I see big companies make this mistake. So, like, if it happens, I'm not being judgmental. Well, I kind of am being judgmental, but like a small CPG company has an excuse, but those are the kind of little things. Not asking in such a way that you have the universe of potential answers that
Yeah.
someone could do, which is why it's always better to have like a nowadays, especially an other specify or not applicable or something if you're worried about that. But if any of you have ever been answering a survey and you're like, well, I
I
can't
don't.
answer this and I can't go on. Well, whoever's on the other end of that is getting this data that's inherently flawed because a bunch of people are picking random answers because they can't
Yeah.
seed otherwise.
Yeah. Oh, that's so true. I've certainly taken surveys before where I'm like, I don't
None
agree
of
with
these
either
are
of these,
applicable,
but
and it won't let me skip ahead. And I want to get my,
yeah.
$5 whatever, like it happens. It
Yeah.
happens to the best, you know, best of researchers. Sometimes you just
Yeah. Oh, I
programmatic.
love that double barrel question. That's a good one. Um, so what, going back to our example, so what I usually see is that, again, I make an amazing sauce, condiment. I think I want to bring it to life. Um, everybody, all my friends and family tell me, oh yeah, totally buy this. And maybe even a few of them have purchased it from me. Probably not at what you should be charging, but in any case. And then maybe I go out and I survey maybe my Instagram or my Facebook followers. Maybe I even do like I'm going to send samples to friends and family with a, Google form or a Survey Monkey. Um, is that worse than no data at all?
Yeah, that's kind of my thing. Is that worse than no data at all? Um,
Or what's the
I
problem
would use
there?
I would
Like,
use it as a foundation. There's another concept. It's called self-selected sample. So whenever you don't have a representative sample, or sometimes people will refer to like a census representative sample, you risk inherent biases. So um, if you're talking to people that know you, know of your brand, are inherently, condiment junkies, um, are subscribe to a particular influencer, that can all be useful, but it has to be taken in context because it's a self-selected sample. Now, with data can be good as long as you know the limitations of it. So if you use it as like, this is great initial information, I'm going to use this as the basis for asking the kind of questions of a more representative sample of you always want to get like, what is representative of your target audience in a way that you can extrapolate that information to a group beyond the people in your, 3 degrees of separation circle. Because unless everyone in that circle is going to tell everyone and everyone's going to shell out money to buy it, that's going to be a problem. I'm a big believer in understanding differentiation. Like when I hear the word like, yeah, but it's the best, mine's the best. I just, like I'm not a violent person, but like I just want to just like stop, stop right now.
Yeah.
You're not going to win on being the best because it's generally subjective. You're usually if you're a cottage or you're not usually going to win on price. Like there are certain things that you need to know your limitations. I'm not going to be playing volleyball. I'm not going to be, snowboarding. Like at some point, you have to accept what you are and where your strengths and your weaknesses are. That kind of, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, challenges. And sometimes we, especially entrepreneurs, it's hard, no one wants to hear that their baby isn't beautiful to everybody, essentially. No one wants to hear that.
Yeah.
But in order to be successful, and this can mean successful in bringing that, not, I mean, even understanding feedback about the condiment and about like, what is it going to replace? Like, is it a new, game-changing condiment that's going to be used on something non-traditionally, or is it better than Tabasco? Understanding differences and advantageous differences is always going to be more important than things like subjective things like it tastes better. I did have a condiment that people wanted to market as something that could be used on lots of foods. And when we went to look at it, like one of the competitors was like Tapatio. So you've got to, you're not likely to compete and take
Yeah.
market share from Tapatio. How are you going to differentiate yourself to say to someone, this is what you should use instead of Tapatio? Or do you say like, this is an augment that you use differently than Tapatio? And then you look at things like um, things that you might not think of if you're not a professional. Like there's a lot of differences in cultures in terms of sauce preferences. And oftentimes there's a lot of, personal pride that, like you're not gonna change someone of it, if they're a long time brand user of certain condiments.
Yeah.
Um, you know, so, it's understanding where the opportunity is and where you can get the most, like people talk about low hanging fruit and, kind of like looking for, okay, you probably don't have one target audience. People target audience, like there's usually multiple audiences and they have different likelihoods of penetration and conversion.
Yeah.
And understanding that, as counterintuitive as it sounds, that you're better off understanding your unique value proposition and advantages for certain specific subsets over universal appeal, that you're ultimately going to be better off.
Yeah, so it seems like if I'm doing that, situation that I described where I'm sending out a Google form and asking people on social media and it sounds like there's definitely some negative things that can come from that. I know you and I talk a lot about like it's kind of that echo chamber, right? Where you're like hearing from the choir and all the
Yeah,
people who already support you.
yeah, you're preaching to the converted, kind of
Yeah,
thing,
exactly. And
And
you're not,
iron Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
If they're on your mailing list or if they're following you on Instagram, I mean, I don't want to get into the political parallels, but usually when someone's into something, the nature of social media is that echo chamber, that it keeps reinforcing the opinion you already have, whether it be of a product, a person, a concept. It's gonna continue to double down on
Right.
that information. So seeking people who are not in your echo chamber is going to be really important in order for you to have a more accurate picture of your market potential.
Yeah. Because I can see like it's a little bit of a tangent maybe, but it's like if I hear one more person say like, but you can use this on everything with their amazing product, the
Mhm.
reality is like you might use it on a lot of things and you've talked to people who like you've convinced them to use it on a lot of things, but when it's on a store shelf, right?
Mhm.
And maybe you're not at a farmer's market in a place where you can like tell people all these things. Like your product is it's got to do so much lift and there's just no way that you can explain all of that. And I feel like doing market research in the correct way where you're getting really unbiased feedback and the questions were asked correctly, so you're getting good data would really help me if I was the maker to figure out size, flavors, usage, highest levels of usage. And
Mhm.
and then like I said, who's my most likely consumer so that I can really be creating messaging and marketing around that and like all my branding and all the decisions I make, right? It could just be like I was going to do this much larger container. Now I'm doing something smaller or vice versa, right? It's like just these tiny decisions that can have huge impact on your success.
Mhm. And there's a lot of times people, I mean, I get accused of being overly analytical, but I mean, I guess that's
I
an
think that's what you want in
occupational
a market
hazard.
researcher.
Yes, that's an occupational hazard. I can live with that. But people like, oh, I got into Costco. It's like, well, unless you sold significantly through Costco, like being there, like getting there is not the end goal. And I've seen this with Whole Foods. Like we got into Whole Foods, like, yeah, but no one's buying it
Right.
necessarily at Whole Foods. Like, or,
The
it's like,
reorder is where you
yeah.
I got a
So
reorder from that
I
store.
have done some creative things. Okay, like let's say you're in Whole Foods. Let's do it. I'll still call it an in-home use test, but have part of the exercises be shopping for the product, which we obviously like give them a stipend. Let's say it's, $30 in addition to what we pay them for market research. And you're gonna buy this, our target product plus two or three other products, like what catches your eye, like understanding how is it appearing juxtaposed against the competitive landscape on that store shelf. Because like people buy in different ways. Like I'm an experimenter. I have no brand loyalty. I'm terrible. I will go, and if it sparks my interest or creative, or I've never seen it before, I'm all in. Other people, it's going to take more for them to be interested in something that's not proven. They don't want to hear their family gripe about, why'd you change brands, or like mine does. um, um, so I try to think about like what's the real use scenario. They're going to go to the store. This condiment is going to be surrounded by all these other condiments at Whole Foods or natural grocers or wherever. And what words, colors are going to stand out. Like I see that a lot of people like it's vegan and gluten free. It's like, well, so are a lot of things, and vegan can cut both ways.
Yeah.
I've done work in power bars where vegan in certain brands backfires. So you can put it in the back on small print, but it's not only going to not be enticing, it's going to be off-putting for some people. Like gluten-free is for some baked items. Like gluten-free on a condiment. That's so
Many
are a
are
lot.
anyway. So
But
yeah, you're
that
like,
kind of
okay,
thing.
duh.
So understand what's different and what's compelling about your brand, and then taking it home. And like, yeah, it doesn't matter that you can use it on five different things. Like the burnout on that is going to be so high for most people, but where is it most successfully utilized?
Yeah.
You can use just about anything on anything. So again, it's kind of like saying it's the best tasting or whatever, like that's inconsequential. I'm looking for enough volume usage of the condiment that like, can it be added to sour cream and made into a dip? Like then you're using a larger volume as opposed to like sprinkled on a whatever on a burger, like
Yeah.
it's all,
Some things take a long time
yeah.
to use up.
Yeah. I
For
mean,
sure.
ironically, I'm much more vigorous about making sure that my clients' business model's more revenue generating than I am with making sure the market research to support them is. But that's
Yeah.
why I'm looking at tools like how can I help people be set up for success? And
Yeah.
how can I give them the advice that I'd give to a Fortune 1000 company or some of my bigger or better funded clients so that they can benefit from some of the key things. And how can I help them understand what's safe to do themselves and what, you know, probably shouldn't be. And a lot of
Hmm.
times startups forget that you for a non self-selected sample, you're going to have to pay people. They're not likely like going to do it for the honor of
Right.
trying a free
This is beyond
condiment.
your friends and family, so there's usually
Yeah.
compensation beyond just the
Yeah,
product.
so and people, so sometimes there are short-sighted cost cutting measures that people do that can have a ripple effect that's quite costly in the long run. And
Yeah.
bad data is one of those examples of things that
Well,
can cost
it's
you in the
still
long
an investment of time and some money, to do a bad market research survey versus
run.
a little more to do a good one,
And
which
you can augment it. Like I've done things where, okay, the customer sample is 75, and then the non-customer sample, or the sort of self-selected sample 75, and the others there. And then you can see by side. You can
yeah, that's true.
combine them for the purposes that you need to combine them, but you can also look at them and you'll see very clearly that there are going to be differences
Mm,
between those samples. And so, like there's nothing, I'm not one of those things or one of those people that's going to say, like, you have to do it this way. I'm like, why don't you do both? And then you can, what's called cross tab, you can see, like, okay, yeah, I see this says this, and maybe, it has good information, but limited. But if I'm being more objective, this is what I hear. And how do I combine those things to make it actionable, confidently actionable, and move me forward? But you don't put blinders on and think that your self-selected sample is going to give you everything that you need. That that's where it gets
sure.
right. So say like bad data is worse than no data at all because you think but most people don't understand the self-selected sample concept until you lay it out for them.
Yeah, makes sense. And I could see how doing some kind of well-designed market research survey would help the people who are maybe stuck in analysis paralysis. So if that's you, right, that it will actually give you some good data to make some decisions and move forward. And for those people who are maybe like, no, let's just go. I'm ready. I think this is the winner. It'll might just slow you down just a little bit to say, are my assumptions correct? And is this the right size, the right flavor, the right texture, the
Mhm.
right branding, the right customer to help you be more successful. Um, for all my like go-getters and like let's just go
Yeah.
people. All right, so I am this early stage brand. I'm thinking about launching my condiment and I really want to do it the right way. And I don't have a huge budget, right? But I realize like I got to spend something on this, and making some investment is going to really help me make good decisions. So I am so excited that you have put together something, because I know this is the nut you've been trying to crack for a long time, is like, how do I help people like this who can't afford the full, the larger scale consulting fees. So tell us about your brand new program that you are launching.
Yeah, I call it kind of DIY with a safety net because I want to make sure people are set up for success. And I would rather budget in some time for me to review what they did. So it's DIY, but it builds in time for me to review either asynchronously or in real time what you're doing and give you feedback, not only for this particular project, but so that you know going forward, because presumably this is not going to be the last product you ever test in your life. I mean, my goal is that you're successful and you're going to be testing lots of products and lots of flavors and formulations. So there's my commitment to empowering you to make those kind of decisions going forward. And I can't possibly uh, promise to bring in a project on their budget with the budgets that people tend to have with, and like big, is subjective depending on, like they
Yeah.
consider it super big, but in a market research world, it's not really big. So I've come up with ways for the recruiting, the importance that I keep stressing data, making sure that you get the exact people that you want. And then for the data collection instrument, which could be the in-home use questionnaire, it could be a focus group discussion guide, it could be an online survey, to make sure that the kinds of questions that you're going to need, that you can pick and choose, kind of like a salad bar of questions, and you take what you want or need for that particular thing. And then at the end of it, it'll be in a Google Doc or something, and I'll be like, okay, uh, remove remove these croutons, add this broccoli, like to make it what is
Yeah.
going to set you up for success going forward. And so I'm making them really affordable so that no one has to say like, well, I can't afford market research. I'm making it really affordable for people to at least do something, and do something that they can make confident decisions on.
Absolutely. And I went through the course myself and I thought it was fantastic. I love that you kept the modules really short and sweet, and the information and the tools like are super robust and really helpful. And I can see even in my own experience of like I could be like I could totally I can see myself being like, oh yeah, I can just do this on my own. But then after going through the modules and seeing what you did, I'm like, oh yeah, this is way better than what I would come up with on my own. And to get your feedback. Any kind of market research project is going to be a little bit of an investment, but if you're going into, self-manufacturing, you want to go in e-commerce on retail store shelves. If you're going into co-packing, like that's a big investment. And it seems like getting this information up front and the right data can save you so much time and it just heartache in the retweaking later, right? The new
Mhm.
packaging or the new formulation or all the things that you might want to change because you didn't get the good data. So I really appreciate that you've been so thoughtful in creating this course. And where can people find this course?
Can always reach out to me on LinkedIn or on my website. I'll have a link to the course. I'm offering it in kind of a few different ways to kind of because people have different amounts of time and energy and needs and desire to do it yourself. So there's the sort of do it yourself with a safety net and then some components if they need some extra support beyond that,
Yeah.
depending on what they're trying to accomplish. And so off of my website, or if they have any questions, if anyone has any questions, you can always reach out to me on email or on LinkedIn. But I always I'm committed to continuous feedback. I mean, part of the reason that I've been working on this or I've been noodling around on it for years is because I would have people that would watch that podcast and like, yeah, I totally want to do market research. And then I'd found out their budget and I'd try to make it work, but trying to, I would be doing myself a disservice or themselves a disservice. So this this fills that gap. Like I can feel good that I'm delivering exceptional value and giving them something that they're not going to get anywhere else and set them up for, hopefully they'll become a big company and then they'll have the budget to come back and do an even bigger project.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, it's so cool that you put that together. I mean, that's the beauty of online courses. And, if somebody were to hire me directly to help them launch their packaged food business, like it's a lot more to work one-on-one versus, working in an online program and getting feedback. And so I love how thoughtful you were about this. It's FordisConsulting.com is your website. I'll make sure and put your links and everything into the show notes. But I think it's a very small investment compared to, what you would pay as an agency or even working with a individual consultant. So really grateful that you put that together. I think that's such a nice, really fills a need in the market. So congratulations on getting that done.
Thank you. And maybe people will listen to this one and I'll encounter some other challenge. And then in another 4 years, I'll come back and tell you what my solution is. Hopefully I'll do it on a more accelerated timeline.
Yeah, maybe about 4 years. That's so crazy. Wow. Well, it's been amazing to be in your orbit and part of each other's world over the last 4.5 years. And really grateful for you coming on and talking about market research and how people can do it better. And so thank you so much for being here.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm glad that you're so supportive of businesses, that we have similar philosophies, and that you understand the role of data and how much heartache and money and energy that can save in the long run.
Absolutely. Amazing. All right. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.
That was an incredible conversation. I'm so glad I got to have Lara back. She's really an industry leader, and I love that there's just no BS with her. You get like she's just honest with you, and she's not going to try to make you feel better, but she's really interested in getting to the truth of things, really helping you to make great decisions. And I love, love, love that she has put together this amazing offering for you guys. So do be sure to go check out this course if you're thinking about doing market research. Asking the right kind of questions is everything between bad data and good data that's helping you make the right decisions. All right, until next time, have an amazing week.